The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that bites through old walls and creeps into the bones. Inside his small wooden cabin, the human sat near the dying fire, his rough hands stretched toward the fading warmth. He lived alone on the edge of the forest, far from the city lights and far from trouble. That was how he liked it. He had seen enough of the galaxy's cruelty, enough of war and greed, and now he just wanted peace. But that night, peace came to him in a way he did not expect. A knock echoed on the cabin door, soft at first, then desperate. He frowned. No one ever came here. He rose slowly, his boots scraping against the wooden floor. The knock came again, weaker this time, like someone using the last of their strength. When he opened the door, he froze. On the snowy ground stood a woman. No, not human. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, her skin pale with strange markings. She was an alien, trembling, thin, her clothes nothing more than torn rags. In her arms she held a small child, even thinner, her lips blue from the cold. The child clung to her mother weakly, her head resting against her shoulder as if too tired to lift it. The woman's voice cracked as she spoke. "Human, please, feed my daughter. Just her. I'll stay quiet, I'll cook, I'll stay in your bed if you want, just let her eat." The words hit him like a blade. The human felt the weight of her desperation. He stared at the child, at her hollow cheeks, at the way she breathed shallow, almost like each breath was her last. The mother's eyes were full of shame. She wasn't begging for herself. She was offering her dignity, her life, anything, only to keep her daughter alive. For a long moment, he didn't move. He knew the rules. Aliens like her were unwanted, rejected, hunted. To help them was to invite danger. And yet, could he really close the door on a starving child? The fire behind him cracked. The night wind howled through the trees, carrying snow that stung his face. The mother shivered harder, her legs nearly giving out. She hugged her daughter closer, whispering words in her own tongue, maybe a prayer, maybe a goodbye. The human's heart pounded. He wanted to say no, to tell them to leave, to protect his own safety. But the sight of the child broke through his walls. He remembered another child long ago, one he could not save, and the memory clawed at his chest. "Come inside," he said at last, his voice rough. The woman gasped softly, her knees buckling. He caught her arm before she fell, guiding her into the cabin. The warmth inside was weak, but to them it must have felt like life itself. He shut the door quickly, the storm's howl muffled to a whisper. The mother placed her daughter near the fire, her hands trembling as she rubbed the girl's arms, trying to warm her. The child's eyes fluttered open, staring at the flames as if she wasn't sure if they were real. The human moved quickly to the corner. He had bread, hard and old, and a little soup left from the day. He placed it in front of the child. She didn't wait, her tiny hands clutching the food, biting into it with desperate hunger. Tears filled the mother's eyes. She didn't touch the food, only watched her daughter eat. The human sat back, his eyes narrowing. Why had she come here, to his cabin, out of all the places? Did someone send her? Was this a trap? Or was it really just a mother's last chance? The woman whispered again, her voice low and broken. "I will do anything, human. Just keep her alive. I will work. I will cook. I will never complain. I will never leave. Your bed empty if that is what you want, but please don't send us away." He stared at her. The shame in her words was heavy, but the firelight revealed her face, and there was something in it that was not shame. It was strength. She was ready to give up everything, not for herself, but for the small child who now licked the bowl clean. The human did not answer. Not yet. He only threw another log into the fire, sparks flying upward. His silence stretched in the small cabin, and the mother sat trembling, her arms wrapped around her daughter. The hook was sharp. The question now burned in both their hearts. Would he keep them, or would he send them back into the snow to die? The cabin was small, built of old wood and patched with iron, but to the alien mother and her child it felt like a palace compared to the frozen storm outside. The fire crackled brighter now, casting shadows on the walls. The human sat in his chair, arms crossed, watching the two with sharp eyes. He still wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. The little girl had fallen asleep on a rug near the fire. Her thin body curled up. She breathed deeper now, the food giving her fragile strength. Her face was pale, but not as lifeless as before. The mother tucked a ragged cloth around her daughter, then sat silently, her back straight though. Her hands shook. The human studied her. She looked broken, yet proud. She had begged him at the door, even offered herself, but now that she was inside, her silence felt heavy, as if she feared one wrong word might push him to send her away. He cleared his throat, his voice deep. "What's your name?" The mother flinched at the sound. Then whispered, "Sira." Her eyes stayed on her child as she spoke. She did not ask his name, perhaps because she thought it didn't matter. Perhaps she thought she wouldn't be here long. The human leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "Why here, Sira? Out of all the cabins in the woods, why knock on mine?" She hesitated, her lips parting, but no answer came. She only lowered her head. The silence stretched between them like a rope. Pulling tighter, he frowned, suspicion rising. Was she hiding something? Was this some trick? He had heard stories. Desperate aliens luring humans into pity, then bandits arriving to rob them. He studied the thin frame of the woman, the way her shoulders trembled, the way her eyes darted to her daughter every few seconds. She did not look like a liar, but hunger and fear made anyone capable of anything. "Speak," he said, harsher this time. Her voice cracked. I had nowhere else. We were running from them." Her throat closed on the last word. "Them," he repeated, leaning back slowly. Sira's hands gripped her knees, her nails, dull and broken, dug into her skin. She shook her head, refusing to say more. The human narrowed his eyes. He wanted answers, but he also knew pressing too hard might shatter her. He had seen it before, refugees who had lost everything, prisoners who no longer trusted their own voices. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. The child stirred but did not wake. Finally, Sira whispered again. "I only wanted her to live. Nothing else. If you wish, I will go when morning comes. Just let her rest tonight." The human rubbed his jaw, torn. Something in her tone carried truth, yet also a shadow of something unspoken. He wondered. Who hunted her? Why was she willing to give up her dignity so easily? What had she endured to reach his cabin? "Morning will decide," he muttered, standing to fetch more wood for the fire. She bowed her head, accepting his words without protest. As he placed logs into the flames, he felt her eyes on him, not in challenge, but in quiet study. She was measuring him, perhaps the same way he measured her. Did she see kindness in him? Or just another human who might throw her out when the cold light of dawn came? He returned to his chair. His stomach growled faintly, reminding him he had given his last soup to the girl. He had lived alone so long that sharing food with strangers felt unnatural. Yet when he looked at the sleeping child, he felt no regret, only a strange heaviness in his chest. The storm outside roared louder, snow beating against the shutters. The cabin groaned with the weight of wind, but inside time seemed to slow. The only sounds were the fire and the shallow breaths of the two guests. Hours passed. The mother never lay down. She sat awake, her eyes fixed on her daughter as if guarding her from unseen enemies. The human did not sleep either. Every time he closed his eyes, the woman's broken plea echoed in his head. "Feed my daughter, I'll stay quiet, I'll stay in your bed." Why had she offered such words? He clenched his fists. The galaxy had stripped her of pride, twisted her into thinking her only value was in service and silence. He hated whoever had done that to her. When dawn began to glow faintly through the cracks of the cabin wall, the storm eased. The world outside was covered in thick white snow, fresh and untouched. The girl stirred, opening her eyes weakly. She smiled faintly at her mother, then at the warmth of the fire. For the first time, the human saw Sira's face soften. A tear slipped down her cheek as she kissed her daughter's forehead. Her lips moved in a whisper too low for him to hear, but the devotion was clear. The human leaned back, his eyes narrowing. He had a choice. When the sun rose fully, he could send them away, keep his life simple. Or he could keep them here, and step into danger he did not yet understand. The suspicion in his chest did not fade, but the sight of the mother and daughter, two fragile lives clinging to hope, made the decision heavier. The morning was coming fast, and with it, answers would have to come too. The morning light crept through the cracks in the cabin walls, painting thin lines across the wooden floor. The storm had ended, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the wind. The human rose from his chair, his back stiff. He had not slept. His eyes kept returning to the alien mother and her child, watching them as if one wrong move might turn kindness into regret. Sierra, the alien mother, sat close to the fire. Her daughter rested in her lap, wrapped in a ragged cloth. The girl's small chest lifted and fell slowly. Her breathing was no longer shallow. She looked less like death and more like a child who could live another day. The human placed a kettle of water above the flames. The sound of bubbling soon filled the air. He poured it into a wooden cup, handing it toward Sierra. She hesitated, then accepted it with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice low. The human leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his voice was steady but firm. "Now tell me why you came here. Who are you running from?" Sierra froze. Her eyes dropped to the child in her lap. For a moment it seemed she would stay silent, but the human's gaze pressed on her like weight, and at last her lips parted. "My people once lived far from here," she said slowly, her voice carrying both pride and sorrow. "We had villages, families, honor. But war came, not by our choice. We were taken, scattered, some sold, some killed." The human's jaw tightened. He had seen such things before. He knew what the word taken meant. Sierra's fingers brushed through her daughter's hair. "I ran with her. I kept running, always running. The ones who chase us do not see her as a child. To them she is property." Her voice cracked and she pressed her lips against the girl's head. "And me? I am worthless. They said so every day until I almost believed it." The human shifted, unease stirring inside him. He had expected lies or excuses. Instead, what she gave him was pain that felt too raw to be false. Still, suspicion gnawed at him. "Why my cabin, Sierra? Out of all places, why here?" Her eyes lifted, glowing faintly in the morning light. "Because I heard whispers that a human lived here. One who does not follow the others. One who keeps to himself. If anyone might open a door, it would be him." The human stiffened. His isolation was known farther than he thought. He wondered how many others might come, seeking him, how many desperate souls might knock on his door in the nights to come. Sierra lowered her head again. "If I am wrong, then cast us out." But I could not watch her die in the snow. The child stirred, blinking awake. Her eyes were large, reflecting the firelight. She looked up at the human with innocent curiosity. A soft voice escaped her lips. "Mama, is he safe?" The words cut deeper than Sierra's pleas. The human opened his mouth, but no answer came. Safe. Was he safe? He had fought battles, carried scars, and taken lives. Safety was not something he had ever been. Yet the child asked it, as if he alone could give her that gift. He cleared his throat roughly. "Eat first, questions later." He placed a small plate of bread before them. The girl reached eagerly, nibbling at the dry crust. Sierra only watched, her hunger hidden behind. Restraint, the human noticed, frowning. "You need food too." She shook her head quickly. "She eats first, always her." The human stared at her, then broke the bread in half, pushing it closer to her. "No strength, no mother, no child. Eat." Her eyes filled with tears. She obeyed, chewing slowly as if guilty for every bite. The silence stretched again, but this time it was different. It carried not suspicion alone, but something heavier. Unspoken truths pressing against the eye. Walls of the cabin. Finally the human spoke, his tone softer. "What will they do if they find you?" Sierra's hand tightened around her daughter. Her lips trembled. They will take her. They will break her. She is small, but they will not care. And me, they will sell me again, or leave me to rot. To them I am nothing. Her voice fell to a whisper. That is why I offered myself, I thought. If I gave all I had left, at least she could eat. The human's chest burned with anger. Not at her, but at the cruel truth behind her words. He had seen men treat women as objects. He had seen children starve while leaders feasted, yet hearing it in her trembling voice made it feel sharper than any blade. He turned to the window, staring at the snow-covered forest. His thoughts churned. Helping her meant danger. Trouble would come. Hunters, soldiers, maybe worse. But sending her away meant death, and he knew he could not bear the memory of a small body lying frozen in the woods. Behind him, the girl giggled faintly. Her tiny hand reached toward the sparks rising from the fire. For the first time, she looked alive. And in that laugh, something inside the human shifted. He closed his eyes, briefly, then spoke. You will stay for now. Sira gasped softly, her head bowed. I have nothing to give you. The human's voice was rough but steady. You already gave me the truth, that is enough. The cabin grew quiet again. But this time the silence was not heavy with suspicion. It was fragile, like a new bond forming in the firelight. A bond that might break under the weight of the danger outside, or might grow strong enough to defy it. For the first time, Sira's shoulders lowered. The tension in her frame softened. Her eyes glistened and she whispered almost too softly to hear. Thank you. Human. And as the flames danced higher, the human wondered if he had just stepped into a path that would change everything. The day stretched on, cold and gray. Snow still covered the forest, but the storm had passed. Inside the cabin, the fire burned steady, filling the air with warmth and smoke. The human worked in silence, cutting wood and checking his tools. His mind, however, was far from calm. Every time his eyes strayed to the corner where Sira and her daughter sat, he felt the weight of his choice. He had told her she could stay, for now. But what did that mean? One day, a week, longer. He wasn't sure himself. The little girl, though fragile, was recovering. She had color in her cheeks now. Her small laugh rose every so often as she played with a piece of wood shaped like a doll. The sound was soft, innocent. It filled the cabin with life he had not heard in years. Sira, however, stayed quiet. She moved carefully, cleaning the space, mending torn cloth with thread she had carried. She never asked for more food, never asked for comfort. She only worked in silence, just as she had promised at the door, but the human noticed her eyes. They carried fear that never left. Even when she smiled faintly at her daughter, her gaze flickered toward the windows, toward the door, as if expecting danger to appear at any moment. The human sharpened his blade. Slowly, the sound of metal on stone cutting through the silence. His thoughts grew heavier with each scrape. If the hunters came here, if soldiers tracked her, they would not ask questions. They would see her as a runaway, and him as a traitor. Helping her meant risk. Risk he had avoided for years by staying. Away from the world, he had built this cabin to be his refuge, a place where war and cruelty could not follow. And yet, with one knock at his door, he had allowed danger back inside. His jaw tightened. He remembered the look in the little girl's eyes that morning, the question she had asked. Mama, is he safe? That word echoed inside him like a hammer. Safe. Was he truly safe for them? Sira's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. If you wish us to leave, say so. We will not trouble you more. The human glanced up. Her hands clutched the cloth she was mending, but her voice carried no anger, only weary acceptance. She had expected rejection all along. He frowned, setting the blade aside. If I cast you out, you will not survive the night. Sira nodded slowly. Then you carry our lives in your hands. That is your burden, not ours. Her words struck him, sharp and honest. She did not beg this time. She simply stated the truth. He had saved them, and now, whether he liked it or not, he was tied to them. The human rose and paced across the cabin. His boots thudded against the wooden floor. "Do you know what it means if they find you here?" he asked, his voice low. "They will not spare me. They will not spare this place. They will burn it to the ground." Sierra's eyes lowered. "I know. And yet you came here." He pressed. Her shoulders trembled, but her voice did not break. "Because I had no choice. A mother does not choose danger. A mother chooses survival for her child." The human stopped, his hands curling into fists. He wanted to stay angry, to tell her she had dragged trouble to his door, but her words reminded him of something buried deep inside. His own family, faces he had lost long ago, faces swallowed by war. He had built this cabin not just to escape others, but to escape the grief that followed him. He looked at Sierra again, really looked. She was not just some stranger. She was a reflection of himself, broken, desperate, clinging to what little remained. The little girl laughed again, holding up her wooden doll proudly to her mother. Sierra smiled faintly, brushing her fingers through the girl's hair. In that simple moment, the human felt the dilemma twist tighter. He could send them away and keep his peace, or he could keep them, risk his life, and perhaps find something he had lost: purpose. That night, as the fire dimmed, he sat in his chair, staring into the flames. Sierra and the child slept near the hearth. The crackling wood filled the silence, but his thoughts screamed louder. He imagined the hunters finding the tracks outside, following them to his door. He imagined the girl being ripped from her mother's arms, her cries echoing in the night. He imagined himself standing by, doing nothing. That thought made his stomach twist. He rose quietly and stepped outside. The snow crunched beneath his boots. The forest was silent, but not safe. He scanned the trees, every shadow looking like an enemy, every gust of wind carrying whispers of pursuit. For years, he had lived only for himself, his survival, his quiet life. But now, two fragile lives slept beneath his roof, and his choice weighed on him heavier than any weapon he had carried. When he returned to the cabin, he lingered, at the doorway watching the mother and daughter. The girl curled against her mother, her tiny hand clutching Sierra's torn sleeve. Sierra's face was calm in sleep, but traces of fear still marked her, lines carved by years of running. The human's chest tightened. He knew then that sending them away was no longer an option. But keeping them meant standing against whoever wanted them gone. It meant fighting again. His dilemma was no longer whether he should protect them. The true question was whether he could. As he sat down once more, gripping his blade, he whispered to himself, "If they come, I will not run." The choice was made, though the cost was yet unknown. The following days passed with uneasy quiet. The forest around the cabin lay buried under snow, its silence broken only by the caw of crows or the distant cracking of ice. Inside, life settled into a fragile rhythm. The human chopped wood and hunted small game. Sierra cooked what little food he brought, her hands skilled though tired. The child's laughter returned, faint but growing, like sunlight peeking through storm clouds. But even in those brief moments of peace, the human's mind never rested. He knew it would not last. Tracks in the snow were easy to follow. Hunters would come. It was only a matter of when, not if. One evening, as the fire burned low, he noticed Sierra staring at the window. Her body was stiff, her eyes sharp. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The human paused. He had heard it too, a faint crunch, not the natural sound of falling. Snow, but footsteps. Slow, careful, surrounding the cabin. His hand reached for the blade resting by his chair. His heart pounded. He had prepared for this moment, but the reality was heavier than thought. The little girl sensed the tension. She clutched her mother's arm, whispering, "Mama." Fear spread across her small face. The human motioned for silence, moving to the door. The air outside carried no wind now, only the faint rustle of movement in the trees. Then came the first voice, rough and cold. "We know you're in there," it called, muffled through the wood. Hand over the alien and we'll spare you. Sierra froze, her arms wrapping around her daughter. Her breath came fast, tears shining in her eyes. She looked at the human as if this was the moment she had always feared, the moment she knew might come. The human gritted his teeth. His voice thundered back, "Leave!" A laugh echoed outside, cruel and sharp. "You think you can hide her, human. She belongs to us. She and her whelp are nothing but runaways." The human's grip tightened on the blade. His chest burned with rage. He looked at the girl, her small hands trembling, at Sierra's face pale with dread, and he knew he could not give them up. He turned to Sierra, his voice low but firm. "Take her. Hide in the back. Do not move until—" "I say," Sierra shook her head, whispering, "if they take me, please." "Protect her." The human knelt in front of her, his eyes fierce. "No, I will protect both of you." Before she could speak again, a crash shook the cabin. The door shuddered under the force of boots. They were not waiting for permission. They would break through. The child whimpered. Sierra pressed her close. The human stood tall, his blade gleaming in the firelight. The second strike splintered the wood. A third would bring it down. The human's breath steadied. He had lived alone for years, but now he had something worth fighting for again. When the door burst open, 3 figures stormed inside, cloaked in heavy furs, their eyes sharp, weapons drawn. Snow swirled in behind them. The leader sneered at the sight of the human standing ready. "Step aside," he growled. "This is not your fight." The human raised his blade, his voice cold as iron. "It is now." The clash came fast. Steel met steel. The small cabin shook with the struggle. The human moved with practiced skill, every strike fueled by anger and purpose. He drove the first intruder back, their weapon clattering to the floor. The second lunged, but the human swung hard, knocking him into the table. Splinters flew. The fire roared, shadows dancing wildly. On the walls, the leader pressed forward, stronger, faster, but the human met him blow for blow. Their struggle was brutal, blades scraping, sparks flying. Every strike echoed with the weight of survival. Behind him, Sierra clutched her daughter, her whispers frantic prayers. Her eyes widened as blood stained the floor, fear and hope battling inside her. The human roared as he shoved the leader back. The intruder staggered, his hood falling to reveal a scarred alien face twisted with hatred. "You protect filth," the leader spat. "You'll die for it." The human's grip tightened. "Better than living as you." With a final swing, he drove the scarred man to the ground. The cabin fell silent except for heavy breathing and the crackling of fire. 2 intruders lay motionless. The third crawled to the door, limping away into the snow, his shouts fading into the night. The human stood trembling, his blade dripping. His chest rose and fell with fury and exhaustion. His eyes turned to Sierra and the child. Both huddled in the corner, their faces pale but alive. Sierra's lips parted, but no words came. Only tears streamed down her cheeks. She stared at the human not with fear, but with something deeper. Shock, gratitude, and a fragile spark of trust. The little girl peeked out from her mother's arms, her small voice breaking the silence. "He saved us, Mama." The human lowered his blade, breathing hard. His heart still pounded. But the choice he had made was clear. There was no turning back now. The danger had arrived, and he had chosen his side. Outside, the snow swallowed the last sound of fleeing footsteps, but he knew this was not the end. More would come. They would not forget the fight tonight. He looked at the 2 lives depending on him and spoke with steady resolve. "They'll be back, but so will I." The firelight flickered across his face, shadows and flame dancing together. Sierra held her daughter tighter, and for the first time since the night she knocked on his door, she whispered not in fear but in hope. "Then we are not alone." The cabin smelled of smoke and iron. The fire still burned, but its glow now mixed with the dark stain of blood across the wooden floor. The human leaned against the wall, his blade resting in his hand. His chest heaved, sweat clung to his brow. The fight was over, but the echoes of violence still rang in the air. Sierra crouched in the corner with her daughter, her arms wrapped around the little girl as if her own body was a shield. Slowly, she lifted her head, her eyes finding the human. He stood battered, but unbroken. His eyes, hard as stone during the fight, now softened when they fell on them. "You fought for us," she whispered, her voice trembling. The human wiped the blade on his sleeve and sheathed it. "I told you I will not run." Her lips parted as if to speak more, but her voice failed. Tears rolled down her cheeks instead. She pressed her forehead against her daughter's hair, relief and disbelief flooding her at once. The little girl peeked out, her wide eyes shining with awe. "Mama, he saved us," she whispered, as though saying it aloud made it real. The human crouched down slowly, careful not to frighten them. His voice was steady. "Are you hurt?" Sira shook her head, her arms still holding her child tight. "No, only shaken, but you bled." The human glanced at the shallow cut on his arm, a line of red streaking through his sleeve. He shrugged. "It will heal." He rose again, moving toward the broken door. Cold wind rushed in through the shattered wood, carrying snow. Into the cabin, he looked out into the dark forest. His eyes searched for movement, but all was still. The intruder who fled would not return tonight. Yet he knew the man's words were true. More would come. Sira's voice broke the silence. "They won't stop. They'll return with others, stronger. They'll burn this place." The human turned back, his eyes steady. "Then we'll face them together." She blinked at him, stunned. "Together?" He nodded once, firm. "You are under my roof now. That makes you mine to protect." For a long moment she stared at him, searching for weakness, for a sign of false promise, but there was none. Only determination burned in his eyes, the kind she had not seen in years. Sira lowered her gaze, her hand brushing the hair from her daughter's face. "I thought no human would ever say such words, not after what they did to us." The human's voice deepened. "I'm not them." The child rose to her feet, wobbling slightly but smiling. She clutched her little wooden doll, looking up at the man. "Can we stay?" she asked softly, her innocence piercing through the heaviness of the night. The human crouched again, meeting her eyes. "Yes, you can stay." Her small smile widened and she leaned into her mother's side, whispering something only Sira heard. Sira's tears flowed freely now, but they carried warmth instead of only fear. The human began repairing the door, his strong hands pulling. Broken wood aside, he worked in silence, but his thoughts churned. He had chosen his path. There was no turning back. The cabin was no longer a shelter only for himself. It had become a fortress for three. Sira rose slowly, setting her daughter on the rug by the fire. She walked toward him, her steps hesitant. Her hands reached out, touching the edge of the broken frame. Her voice was quiet. "You don't have to do this. You could have sent us away, pretended we never came. Instead, you fight. You risk. Why?" The human paused, his hands tightening on the wood. He did not answer at once. Memories of the past filled him, faces of people he once protected, faces he had lost. His silence stretched, and finally he spoke, his voice heavy. "Because I couldn't save them, but I can save you." Sira's breath caught. She saw the shadow in his eyes, grief buried under strength. For the first time she realized the man was not only a savior, but also a wounded soul. His kindness was born not of weakness but of scars. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "Then we will stand with you." The words surprised even her, but once spoken they felt true. She was tired of running, tired of being prey. If this man could fight, then she too could find the courage to stand. The human looked at her, his jaw tight, but a faint nod followed. "Then prepare yourself. This won't be easy." The little girl, listening from the fire, lifted her doll like a sword. "I'll fight too," she said, her voice small but proud. For the first time, laughter escaped the human, a short, rough sound. "Not yet," he said, "but one day." The cabin no longer felt heavy with fear. Instead, it felt alive, filled with something stronger than dread. Resolve. That night, they shared the last of the bread sitting together by the fire. The human told them stories of old battles, not of glory, but of survival. Sira listened, her daughter's head resting, On her lap, for the first time in years, she did not feel like a slave or prey or worthless. She felt like part of something, however small. As the flames died down, the human sharpened his blade again. His eyes flickered to the door, his mind alert. The danger was far from over. But for the first time in many nights, he did not face it alone. And Sierra, watching him, realized the truth. This man was not only her protector, he had become the first hope she dared to believe in.